There's never been a better time to have SiriusXM with over 150 channels in your vehicle. Your Platinum Plan offer includes more than ever before to enjoy online, on your phone, or at home. Create your own ad-free personalized stations powered by Pandora. Hear ad-free extra channels and enjoy favorite shows with SiriusXM Video on Demand. What you love is on now.
In the world of marine audio, there certainly is no shortage of choice, but a European option? Now that's interesting. Of course, from the folks at Electromedia, we're talking about Hertz Audio and their incredible lineup of marine audio equipment that you need to take a closer look at. We're blessed today. We've got product expert Ken Ward in the studio, and he's going to give us the skinny on all things Hertz Audio when it comes to the marine segment. This is CMA Connected, presented by SiriusXM, Hertz Audio, and it starts now. Hey everybody, thanks for joining us for another Connected here during the marine audio sessions. Today on the menu is Hertz Audio, right from Italy, and the folks at Electromedia. Now, these guys have been doing marine audio for quite some time. They're innovators in the segment, and they have now literally a huge catalog when it comes to marine audio gear. Today, we're going to focus on a couple key products, especially some newer products. And of course, we've got their product expert, Ken Ward, in the house with us to walk us through all the details, the features, and the intricacies that really make Hertz audio gear unique within this segment. So without further ado, we're going to bring Ken on, and we're going to go ahead and ask him a few questions. Now, Ken, thank you for being on Connected again today. We're talking about marine audio. So the first question out of the gate is, why should dealers at a high level consider Hertz Audio as a major player and potential partner for their business in the marine audio segment?
Well, thanks for having me, Ben. It's always a pleasure. And I'm here in North America, but obviously our headquarters for Electromedia is in Italy. And so I see some of the suppliers here in the States who want to dabble in marine audio. And some of them even are close to like a river or a lake, and they're really excited about that, giving them insight into the marine audio customer. Well, we're on the Mediterranean. We're on a saltwater sea, and there's a significant marine presence in Europe that we have been interacting with commercially for some time. So we feel that we have the edge on a number of companies that have just discovered marine audio. And in visiting headquarters, I can't tell you how many resources and how many important senior people have been assigned to this project. It's really important to Electromedia.
Ken, that's incredible to hear, and that certainly gives us a little bit of perspective as far as the company goes and its commitment to marine and how it's so perfectly positioned geographically to really get serious and test that equipment. Now, we've got a lot of products to cover today, and when I took a look at it, I thought we'd start with the source. You see what I did there? I understand there's a new source unit in the lineup for 2023, and I want to give you every opportunity to tell us all about this new source unit.
Yes, we do have a new source unit. It was actually announced some time ago, and with worldwide IC supply challenges, we're glad that we've finally been able to bring the HMR50 to the market. And we're not usually thought of as a source unit company, but this is, I think, the third or fourth source unit we've brought to the market. And a couple of the things that really set it apart, it's got the largest color display of any of the head units that we've done. It is Sirius XM capable. I know a number of your listeners are going to be excited about that. It has 3 zones, so it can manage larger craft that have more different audio zones required. And it has an 8-band EQ built in for each of those 3 zones. So if you're not using our multi-zone DSP amplifier, you still have the ability to adjust your tower speakers separately from your bow compartment speakers, separately from your cabin speakers. For larger craft, we also have a color remote panel that looks very similar to the HMR50, but it's a remote control wired for the HMR50 so that you can have control over the audio system from different locations. And then we also have a non-display controller that is compatible, and you can have multiples of those in the craft connected to the HMR50. So it's more along the lines of something you'd see in a larger system with a lot of interactivity. Well, the first thing that I think really gets people's attention is the display. And if we can turn on the display, you'll see the splash screen, and then you'll see also that we've got a lot of backlighting. The backlighting is adjustable to various colors so that we can fit into whatever the decor is of the craft that we're on. And you can see that's a large display, really easy to read, really high contrast. So you also see a button in the lower left that talks about zones. That allows you to get access to the 3 zones. And you can see we have volume controls for all 3 zones, plus a subwoofer level control. And that gives you control over each of those. And so you're going to be running the tower speakers at different levels. If you're have someone skiing versus the rest of the time, you're going to run the front speakers and the bow compartment differently depending on how many people are up there. So you've got a very flexible control. Now there's also the ability to connect to Sirius XM. And as I mentioned before, I know that a lot of listeners today are Sirius XM listeners, and so they're going to be excited about that. You've also got a USB input. You've also got Bluetooth 5.0. 5.0 has a greater range, so we're excited about that. And it'll work with the standard Sirius XM universal tuner module right there that you can see.
Now, Ken, that new source unit certainly seems it has all the features that any marine enthusiast would want, but obviously we want some power in our system so that this source unit can send some signal to. Now, all I've heard about are this new series of amplifiers from Hertz Audio. I believe it's called the Venezia line. Tell us about this new line of amplifiers and why this is such a great product, especially for system building.
Well, there's 2 things that you need to know about Venezia besides how to pronounce it, and you pronounce it the same way I do, by the way, Ben. And the first one is they are the most powerful marine amplifiers we've ever delivered to the market. And the second thing is they're the first family of amplifiers that we delivered to the marine category first. Every time we've had amplifiers in marine before, they've been car audio amplifiers that we've modified. And in this case, these products were initially designed from the beginning to be compatible for the marine environment. The one we've had the biggest buzz about is our 6-channel, the V6. And that is a form factor, or I should say an amp channel layout that is very popular in marine, because on a lot of craft, what you're going to have is a set of speakers up in the front, the bow compartment, and then you're going to have a set of speakers in the aft compartment, and then you're going to have a set of tower speakers. And that's 3 separate zones. And we talked just a moment ago about how the HMR50 can support 3 separate zones. But this amplifier can also administer power to 3 separate zones. Then you add in a sub-amp, and you've covered the entire craft with just 2 amplifiers. And if you do the math, the Venezia amplifier is 160 watts to each of the 6 speakers in that scenario. So we don't have any concerns about getting enough output from the towers, or getting enough output to keep up with the towers, or getting enough output to keep up with our subwoofer. We've got power to spare.
Ken, we're lucky enough to have one of these Venezia amplifiers with us, and Phil from Automob is here helping us display it. Why don't you talk us through a couple of the design cues of the features of this amplifier?
Well, the first thing I want to point out is we usually have more space for amplifiers in a boat than we do in many cars. And so we should put something in the frame so you can see the sense of scale here. That's a good size amplifier. This is our V6. It's a 6-channel amplifier. This is the one that has the most buzz. And you can see underneath this cover that we've got a number of the adjustments in terms of crossovers and input sensitivity that amplifiers need in this day and age, even if some of those functions are handled by the source unit if you go with an HMR50 or an HMR20. Now, you see there's a large connector on the bottom of the screen. Now, if Phil, if you can angle that up, and you can see that connector has set terminals inside it. Why don't you take that connector out, and we'll show people what it looks like with that connector out. So the idea here is that you can make these connections or tighten these connections externally and then plug it into the amp. You've got a service loop if there's anything that you need to do to move the amplifier for access to something else in the craft. And this is specifically done to allow us to IP rate that power connection, so it's much less likely we're going to get any water into the product at all. Now, it's a 6-channel amplifier. So the reason we use 6-channel amplifiers is so that we can amplify the front speakers in the bow compartment in the seating area, the aft speakers that are near the cockpit, and then the set of speakers on the tower if you have tower speakers with a craft that you use for water skiing or wakeboarding. And at that point, this amplifier allows your source unit to individually control each of those zones, and we're giving you 160 watts of RMS, all channels driven power to run your towers, your fronts, and your rears.
All right, so we spent some time on the source unit side of things. We're now seeing the power and the potential of these Venezia amplifiers. But what about bass, Ken? Because, I mean, what fun is marine audio without a little low-end frequency?
Well, we've got to have some bass, and we've also got to have RGB lighting. That's one of the things that I learned when I started learning about marine, is that being able to illuminate the speakers and make them all match and make them all fit into the lighting theme of the craft is really key. Now, we just added to our existing 10-inch subwoofers for marine a 12-inch subwoofer for marine. So one of the things we've heard from our dealers is that it doesn't do any good to deliver a high-performance 12-inch infinite baffle subwoofer if it can't fit in the craft. And depth in the craft is really key. There's not as much empty space in any sort of vehicle as there used to be, and the marine world is no exception. So our 12-inch HMS subwoofer has 5.5 inches of depth, roughly, and that's a couple of inches less depth than is required from some other models on the market. And our dealers are already telling us that they're finding great places to get great bass with this subwoofer driver. Add that into the fact that we've got additional sensitivity, so we get more dB with a similar amount of power, and this is a great recipe to finishing off your marine audio sound system. All right. Here's our subwoofer right here. Now, the most important thing to some folks isn't the amazing audio performance. The most important thing to some customers is, will this match the rest of my visual theme in the craft? So what you can see here is we've got RGB lighting just like in our cabin speakers, and we can set this driver up to add and blend in to whatever visual theme you've got in your craft. We've got a remote control that allows you to set this up to get it exactly where it needs to be with the correct RGB settings. If you take a look at the side of the driver, you can also see what I was referring to as far as depth. You can see that it's a good size driver, but at 5.5 inches, we're going to be able to find many, many places to mount it in an infinite baffle instance in the marine environment. And it's fully rated to make it last much longer in a marine environment than you'd ever get a car audio woofer to last for you.
Now, I'm not going to lie. At first, when I saw the whole thing about lighting and marine, I didn't quite get it. But now I totally understand. So to see how the illumination works, the fact that it's fully programmable, yeah, it absolutely is clutch when selling complete systems to marine customers. Now, the lighting fun doesn't stop there, Ken, right? Because we also have a full line of speakers to go with. So why don't you tell us a little bit more about those?
So speakers have already been a big part of our business for a couple of decades. And the reason we got into speakers for vehicles in the first place, and the first vehicles were obviously automobiles, was because we didn't feel that people were paying enough attention to off-axis performance in a car. If you build a speaker for a home audio cabinet, you can be pretty confident that the cabinet will be aimed at the listener. But if you build and that's also, by the way that speakers get installed in display boards in our stores. But once you put it in a car, it's often off-axis in a door or off-axis in a rear deck, and it's often down low near the bottom of the door. And this is the similar orientation and similar location that we find in many, many craft. We see in boats that there's often a speaker down near our hip or down near our shin, and it's often in the sides of the trim panels in the cabin. So at that point, we're going to have a really key sensitive area for all humans in the audible range is the upper mid-range and lower treble. And if your tweeters are too small and can't handle playing low, the designer of the speaker will just let those frequencies go basically missing. And so we've got this chart that we like to show people that shows the measured off-axis performance of speakers that we found on the market when we got into marine audio, and compare that to the off-axis performance of the speakers that we have delivered to marine audio. And you'll see a big difference right here in the upper mid-range because of the way we used our experience with car audio to bring better performance to the marine world. And we've been told by dealers that these are marine speakers. They just sound better than marine speakers. And we really like to hear things like that. Now, here is an example of the speaker, and it looks like we might have that connected to lights as well. So we can show once again the RGB lighting. There we go. And you'll notice the theme of the grill, the design language of the grill matches what you saw on the subwoofer just a few minutes ago. So once we go in and install speakers throughout the craft, we have a consistent theme all the way through. Now, the tweeter in the center there probably looks a bit larger than you may have expected. I believe this uses our 1.4-inch tweeter design that is much larger than what most folks are used to seeing. And it doesn't go mount on a post through the center of the driver. You can see that it's actually part of the grill design. So it's suspended in front of the speaker. This lets us have some lower distortion, and it lets us use a much larger tweeter that we can get more output from, even in the locations that dealers have to install speakers in.
Now, Ken, correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't Hertz Audio one of the first to kind of introduce having DSP in a marine environment? I want to still understand, because I talk to dealers all the time and they ask me, like, Ben, I don't get it. This is a scenario that's open air, multi-zone. There's no sound stage per se. Why do we even need DSP in a marine audio environment? Ken, can you help us understand?
I've been doing a lot of training on this topic, and I've come up with a new way to explain it that I think this is probably a really good time to cover this. If we build a marine speaker, just one marine speaker, and we put it in the craft, the sound on the lab or the sound in the test bench is going to be different than the sound in the boat, depending on where we install it in the boat and what kind of boat it is. And a DSP will give us some tools to make that speaker sound better and louder. We'll be able to get rid of any dips. We'll be able to get rid of any irregularities in the sound so that we have more consistent sound pressure across the range we want that speaker to play. Now, the problem is that if we just have one speaker, we're not going to be able to cover all of the notes we need to be able to cover. Marine speakers usually have a tweeter built in, so we'll need to have a tweeter there. And then we don't have a speaker large enough to play low notes, so we'll need to have a subwoofer. And once we have different size speakers playing at the same time, those speakers run the risk of interfering with each other any place they overlap, especially when we take these speakers and we don't install them in a cabinet, like for a home audio cabinet or a pro audio cabinet. We install them all over the craft in different places. And so now we have to manage these speakers so they don't cancel the sounds where they overlap and lose sound pressure level. So DSPs are good for that. Then it turns out that we're not that worried about stereo in a boat, but we do need more output in a boat. So if we just have one speaker up front, it turns out that it's not loud enough. We're going to need speakers in different parts of the boat to help us reach the sound pressure levels we need. Once again, once we have speakers in different places playing the same sounds, we run the risk of cancellations. So a DSP will help us manage this to get all the sound pressure that our customers paid for. So this is the Hertz S8 DSP. This is the newest DSP in the Hertz family. And as you can see from the picture, it's a compact chassis design. And let's grab that screwdriver and put it in the frame again, just so we can have a reference. That is a small DSP. Now, the way some companies make DSPs small is by leaving out all the good parts. And we made sure not to make that mistake. Rather than 4 inputs that won't do signal correction, this actually has 6 inputs that we can sum together and de-equalize however we need to. And so this is a much more powerful DSP than what most folks have seen in this size. You can see here that we have a speaker level input and a preamp level input. The speaker level input already has USS loading circuitry built in. You'll never have to add resistors ever to a high level integration with this product. And you can also see that we've got a USB port, but that's not the only way to connect to this device. We also have Bluetooth for tuning and an app for iOS and Android where you can tune this entire device with your phone or a tablet in the field. When you're going to the marina, you don't have to bring a whole PC. You can just use the portable equipment. You can use a tablet, you can use your phone, and you won't have to bring anything else.
Ken, I think we've really taken dealers who are watching this, from the beginning to the end and really demonstrated how there's no question Hertz Audio is a specialist when it comes to marine audio. So I guess we'll summarize by asking you, Ken, in your own words, how do you feel, how do you express to a dealer who's tuned into this and say, maybe I should consider Hertz Audio as one of my main lines serving my marine customer?
I'm going to just circle back to where we started. There's a number of folks that are putting their toe in the water with marine because they see there's some growth in that business, and maybe they had an overseas supplier contact them and say, hey, I could sell you a container of marine speakers. That's not how we're operating in this space. We've dedicated long-term personnel internally to this category. We've actually got contractual obligations with a few boat builders who are buying some of our parts for their own boats right now. And so we're in this category for the long haul. We're not going anywhere. So when I was in retail and I was looking for a partner, one of the questions that I always asked myself was, are they going to be in this category over the long haul? And that is what Hertz Audio's plan is with marine. We're going to be there with you.
I want to take this opportunity to thank Ken Ward for joining us today and talking to us all about marine audio and, of course, from Hertz Audio. Big shout out to Phil Cameron as well from Automob for doing a great job showing those products in their studio. Listen, there is no doubt, if you've watched this far, Hertz Audio is a serious contender within the marine audio segment. Plethora of different products, high tech, and they've thought about things like depth when it comes to the IB subwoofers and all the different lighting options when it comes to speakers. No doubt, take a closer look at Hertz Audio when you're thinking about partnering up with the right brand for your marine audio customers. Now, for those of you in Canada, dealers, make sure you connect with Automobility as they are the exclusive distributor for Hertz Audio here in Canada. On that note, thanks for tuning in for this CMA Connected presented by SiriusXM. I'm your host, Ben Wu. Until next time, we connect.
Hey guys, Ricky Lima here from SiriusXM. I had a chance to speak to some dealers and ask them what they love about selling SiriusXM. Here's what they had to say.
Coast-to-coast coverage.
I love SiriusXM for commercial-free music.
It's a great add-on sale and a profit opportunity.
We love selling SiriusXM because you can listen to the same channel coast to coast.
Profitability and ease of installation. It's a no-brainer.
We love selling SiriusXM for its ease of installation, great profitability, and reliability.
People love it.